today's card's going to be using these coloured papers, and what I'm using here is this really thin card. I don't like the colour, and it's not very good for using it as for base cards because it's just not thick enough. So I use it just for bulking up my designer paper ranges that aren't thick enough to hold up if you're using three-dimensional stickers, for example. So here I'm just sticking it onto the designer paper and cutting round each square. This would be a lot quicker if you had square punches. I did have square punches, but they weren't quite the right size for what I wanted, so I just thought I'd do it by hand, but it is, or would be far quicker if you had the square punches. I think this would probably be a 2-inch square punch, something like that. So yeah, I'm just cutting around them. I've put this one on at a slight angle because the stripy pattern of the paper, I wanted it to be across the diagonal, so that's why I've done it at that odd angle. So I'm just folding the base card here. It's just a square card. It doesn't really matter what size card you use, but I wanted a square card because I'm constantly doing the A6 size card, so I thought this would be a nice change. And here I'm just laying it out to see what it looks like. Now in this bit what I'm doing is creating the square frame. Now I've just done that by drawing on the actual square using a pencil and a Tim Holtz design ruler. But again, this would be far quicker if you had a smaller square punch, but I didn't have one just the right size, so I've done this by hand. And either way is fine, it's just the using the punches would be a lot quicker. And so here I'm just cutting it out using my craft knife. And I find it easier just to do more strokes, multiple strokes instead of just doing it one, really pressing down really hard, because you get a better cut if you just do lots of little ones. So here I'm just sanding down the edges just to give it a little bit more of a crisp cut. You probably wouldn't have to do that if you'd use a square punch, but it's never exact if you're just doing it by hand. And again, I'm just laying them out to see if they're where I want them to be. And I'm keeping the little square punch outs because I want to use those for a slightly smaller square inside the square frames. So here I'm using a punch, but again, you don't have to use a punch, you can do it by hand. But I just happened to have the right size punch for this bit. So I'm just punching them out and then deciding where I want to put them. Again, I'm, moving the square around so that the stripes on it are horizontal instead of diagonal, just to add a bit of interest. Here I'm just going to sponge the edges of all the punch outs, both on the outside of the frames and the inside. I'm just using makeup sponges I can buy, from the market or Body Care or whatever. I think I have a whole bag of them for £1, so they're really cheap. And you can use them to go on the inside of the square here as well, which I'm showing you here. It's quite easy to do. Just keep going until you're happy with the colour and the effect that you're heading for. I've also done it on the little squares in the middle as well. So here I'm just using the ruler to centralise the square frames onto the card. And I find the Tim Holtz ruler really useful for this because it has a 0 marking in the middle, which really helps when you're trying to centralise things onto a card. Now some of these I have just stuck directly to the paper using my snail glue, but here I'm also using some 3-dimensionals on the 2 opposing frames, so the top right and the bottom left are both attached using the dimensionals. And also when I attach the smaller squares into the middle of the frames, I'm doing the opposite. So the top left and the bottom right are going to be adhered using 3-dimensionals, and the other 2 are going to just be stuck down straight to the card. This is just to give it a bit of added interest, and so it's not a flat design while still being quite a simple effect overall. And then just for the sentiment, really, I really love this stamp set. I think it's a woodware stamp set, and I think it stamps really well using the StazOn ink pad. It gets a really, crisp stamped image for that. So I'm just laying them on where I want them to actually be stamped I find this is the easiest way to set them up. And then to just get your stamping block and press down. When you're happy with it, just press down over it, and then they'll be on the block exactly where you want them for your stamped image. I had to rotate the block here a little bit because it's slightly too small for the stamp, but that's okay. So just inking up the stamp here. I just love the smell of StazOn ink. It smells of marzipan, which is quite nice. But yeah, inking it really well. And you've got to be quite quick when you're stamping this, otherwise it dries on the stamp, and then you've got a image that's not quite what you're looking for. But I press it down really well, and it usually works fine and gets a good image. It kind of stuck to the card there as well, so but you can see it's a really crisp image that you get from it. But always clean your stamps off straight away, because I don't think the acrylic stamps are actually meant to be used with the StazOn ink, but I mean, I've never had any trouble using them as long as you remember to clean them straight away. But you should do that with all stamps anyhow. And here I decided the frames needed a frame of their own, so I'm just drawing on a really light pencil mark, where I'm going to do a little bit of paper piercing to make my faux stitching. This is just to kind of put the birthday sentiment into its own frame. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So now I'm just using my paper piercer. First I pierced all the corners so I know what I'm aiming for. And then I just went along and pierced them every so often. I know this isn't going to be perfect, and the stitches are going to be all different lengths because you can't possibly eyeball it perfectly. But I didn't mind this, and I was quite happy to do that. Otherwise I'd use my design ruler, which has the paper piercing holes at, I think, 1/8 inch spacings, but I just wanted to go for the more natural stitching effect. And here I'm just rubbing out the pencil markings because they're no longer needed, and then I'll go along with my black gel pen to draw in the faux stitches. I don't know how other people do it, but I tend to just draw between the holes as opposed to just drawing a line over all of them, because I think it gives a more natural and neater effect. So that's how I do it. So you can see here I'm just drawing one line at a time in between each hole, and just finishing up here, creating the last bit of the frame, and that's the finished card. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Bye.